Let's be honest, most of us receive more education about avoiding sex than about enjoying it. We're taught anatomy, reproduction, safety, how to avoid getting pregnant, but very few of us are taught how to experience pleasure. And what is pleasure? My very first guest on Life Unfiltered was Dr. Cathy. She's back to unpack orgasms, erotic intelligence, body mapping, sensual touch, and often overlooked art of exploring pleasure. We'll be discussing why every body is different, how to discover your unique pleasure blueprint, and what science can teach us about creating more satisfaction, connection, and intimate experiences. This is not an episode to be missed. Be sure to watch till the end, share, and subscribe to Life Unfiltered by Fawz. And we are officially back with my very first podcast, my very first episode guest, just Dr. Cathy. If you guys haven't watched the first one, you really need to watch the first one so you can understand how this one's going to unfold. But I don't know, Cathy. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure.
It is actually such a pleasure in many ways.
Absolutely.
A little bit of a play on words there.
Mm-hmm.
Cathy, I mean, where do we even start? Like, I feel like we spoke about so much in our first episode, and then we were like, okay, there's so much more to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not even going to beat around the bush. Like, we're going straight into this.
Okay.
Like, we're talking about all things women, pleasure, orgasms, relationships, everything. So you tell me, where do we start?
First of all, I think this is something that I just want to say from the bottom of my heart. Last year, when I did the first podcast, I was in such a bad place.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have been able to tell because that was one of my favorite episodes. So, well, thank you for being open and vulnerable.
Yeah. And I'm so much better right now. And I almost feel as if like there is such a world of difference between the healing that had to take place over the last year.
Yeah.
And I think for that moment when I was speaking with you, I forgot about everything that was troubling me. Because I love my work so much. But because I'm really good at compartmentalizing, it also made me realize some of the things that I need to kind of like work on and heal and let go of. So that's been my journey, I think, for the last year.
Wow.
So I'm really happy to be back here and experience this again from a different side.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, you know what? It's funny. You used a really nice word there, compartmentalizing. And I think that's something that we as women do a lot in terms of, when you're at work, you're thinking about work, and when you're with your family, and then when you're with your partner, maybe we can unpack that a little bit. So how does that affect a woman when she's in a relationship, when she's constantly compartmentalizing?
I think it affects us in different ways. But I think one of the things that I found on my own personal journey is that there is a tendency for you to just, say that you have to get on with things, and there's a need to show up and be at your best. And then it's almost crazy, because what I found is that in the moments when I was on my own, those were the moments where I was falling apart. But it's also allowing yourself to fall apart in those moments so that you can then show up for the people who need you.
Right.
And while it's a great strategy because it allows us to keep on moving with things, it reaches a point where you can't do that anymore. And it starts to seep through. And the thing is, because of the work that I do, these are things that will come out at some point.
Yeah,
and sometimes they come out when you are in the therapy space.
Right.
And I think I've been so lucky to have some really gracious clients when that has happened. I've just basically been open and shared that, I'm going through a really tough time. And it's all, it's always like, it's really nice that you shared that.
But I think that's so important. Like, what a beautiful thing to be able to do is sit as a therapist and show your vulnerability to say, okay, I'm a therapist, but I have stuff too. You know, they always say a therapist needs a therapist or a hairdresser needs a hairdresser, for example.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times what ends up happening is that you are going in and you're looking at your therapist and expecting them to have all the answers. And then when they're not, you know, then you start to like wonder. But having that person be open about it, I can see how that shifts the energy.
Yeah. And I've learned so much from my clients. So much. I think, and this is the thing, in the therapy space, you know what you were saying about like, as a therapist, having all the answers. I don't have all the answers.
Sure.
And this is the thing, if I just allow myself to be human, then I'm able to just be myself. And I think that's such a beautiful transformation. So I think over the years, as I've been working in this space, I think I've evolved.
Yeah.
I think I've also, you know, just picked up like new skills. And yes, my therapist is a beautiful person because she has definitely
that.
helped me.
Yeah.
Yes, because a therapist needs a therapist. So
Therapist knows
kudos
therapist.
to her. I love you.
So there's a word I came across recently. I want to say it's biopsychosocial, right? So women's desires and how we are is very much not just biology, it's our psychology. It's the social environment that we're in. So I think that kind of plays on to what you were saying is that women are, whether we're compartmentalizing, but we're also very much dependent on all of these different aspects of our life. And if everything doesn't feel aligned, we get thrown off. Is that what you find? Like, is that something that you've seen with your clients or with yourself?
100%. And this is the thing, like, I don't believe there's like an ever ready kind of environment where you kind of feel ready all the time. And as much as like, you know, when we're talking about it from like a woman's perspective, you will find that men experience this too.
Sure.
So as we're unpacking this, it's really important to kind of like look at all the factors that can actually play into the whole idea that we might not be able to feel desire on cue. And I think that's something definitely to unlearn, because this is messaging that we're just, you know, we're supposed to be operating in this space where when it comes to sex, we can just switch to that side, kind of like when we switch to work.
Yeah.
But pleasure, sex, desire, all of this, I think it's intertwined with everything that's going on around us. So it's good to take stock of what is going on around you, especially if, I don't know, your partner wants to engage and you're not there yet. And I mean, there's been lots of research around spontaneous and responsive sexual desires. Because I think one of the things when people like talk about libido, it's very much, if somebody doesn't want to have sex as much as I do, then they're pegged as the one who has
less
the low
libido.
libido.
Right.
And I think internally and especially psychologically, that has a huge bearing on how I'm going to show up. If I'm going to already show up with that intention of I'm not good enough because I don't want to have sex as much as my partner, then that's already a very counterintuitive process to even get to pleasure, to feel desire. So it's really important that we just, you know, take stock and find out. And this is the thing, we can be spontaneous at the start of a relationship, and that can be really beautiful. But the other thing to consider is that over a period of time, we might become responsive because of life, because of health, because of an argument, because of something that's playing in our minds that we're not really able to speak about.
Right.
So all these factors, they actually play into how we feel about ourselves and how we show up in the sexual space.
Yeah, and I guess for me, it's important to understand that libido, like you said, is not just, you know, you can say you have a woman, let's say in her 40s, okay? And the first thing we're going to do is that my libido has gone down because I have biological or hormonal issues. That's not just the thing, right? It could be so many other factors. And you need to go and take stock of, like you said, what is going on around you? Is this something that's environmental? Is this something that's within yourself? Is this something with your partner? Is this because you're not feeling supported or you're not feeling safe?
Yeah.
Or you're also, we have this whole body image thing. So we get a little bit older and we
Yeah.
start to, I read somewhere it's called grief of your past self.
Yeah.
So you're looking in the mirror, you don't feel like you're the same. You have image issues or image changes. And all of these things play into the fact that you have maybe a lower libido than your partner. And I don't know how many people actually take stock of that. I think it's very easy to say it's a biological issue or it's a hormonal issue.
And this is the thing, we're going through like consistent transformations, I think, as we're aging. And and especially when we're hitting perimenopause,
Yeah.
because that can go on for years before you get into menopause.
Absolutely.
And of course, there's research to suggest that menopause or perimenopause can hit people different depending on what your cultural heritage is
Yeah,
as well.
sure.
So there's that aspect. So now at least there's research to suggest that people of different, like I think it was African American women will experience menopause symptoms that are much more severe than
Oh, really?
their Caucasian
Okay.
counterparts.
Okay.
So there's a lot of research going in. And it's good that it's coming out because people are able to educate themselves, and at least with the internet and of course reels on social media, you can get
Sure.
to know about all these things. But I think it's also important. I think maybe also a big factor sometimes is miscommunication between partners. Because when you think about it, if I'm not feeling confident in my body, because there's so many changes, am I going to be able to talk to my partner about it? Because is my partner going to be able to understand?
Right.
And are they going to be able to, to look at me and kind of see, okay, can I be curious about what she is saying without taking it as a personal attack?
Sure. I also think it's also another stigma, right? For me, it's like you're growing up and you've been told that, oh, you're getting your period, so you're emotional, or you don't really feel sexy because, your body is going through hormonal changes as a child or as you're growing up.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden you're hitting perimenopause and there's another stigma, like, oh, maybe you're not feeling sexual because you're perimenopausal. Or again, you're having hormone changes. I don't know entirely if that's just the truth. Because again, like I said before, I don't think it's just biological. So I think that it's very easy for people for let's say your male counterpart to look at you and say, you're not feeling this because you have hormonal changes, when actually they need to look within and say, am I playing a part in this? Am I not supporting my partner? Am I not making my partner feel safe? So there's so many different layers. And I think instead of pushing that onto someone else and saying, well, maybe you need to look at yourself and say that you're not supporting me, it's easier for me to look at myself and say, I'm just having hormonal changes. And I believe that a lot of women do that.
Yeah. And this is the thing, like how frequently do we feel that we can share about how we're truly feeling, about like what's going on with us? And I think that's a level of kind of like radical honesty that you need to practice within yourself, because there's also this idea of mind reading.
Right.
So okay, I've been with my partner for years, so
Right. They should
need
know.
to understand,
Yeah,
like they're supposed to
absolutely.
know. So if I'm having a bad day, they're supposed to know, and they're supposed to know why. They're supposed to know what I want to eat. And
Yeah.
this is the thing, we can't rely on those cues. While that is something that your partner can pick up, I think vocalizing it is really important, because then it allows you to build on that self-confidence around, I can share what is going on with me, and I can help build a roadmap to connect me to my partner so that I can enhance on the intimacy and passion that I have. And and this is the thing, the honeymoon phase doesn't have to end, but it ends when the effort ends.
Right.
So if you're no longer putting effort, and this is a two-person job, really. If you're no longer putting in effort, but then expecting for things to miraculously work out, it can't happen that way. So it's really important that we do that as partners. We talk to each other, we communicate with each other, but also understand that there are going to be outside factors that are going to come in. And, I remember I did a talk last year, and I think one of the speakers actually said, it might be your partner. Your partner might be the problem. And it's not end of leave your partner.
Yes, of
it's
course.
more or less like, okay, so are we going to start talking about what's not working?
Right.
Because sometimes when you're in a space where you're trying to understand, okay, how can I get for example, my responsive sexual drive activated? We focus on what you need. And what I have found, especially in the work that I do, it is very difficult to say what you need at times, but it's very easy to remember what I don't want.
Yeah.
So maybe starting from there, like what's not working? Are we engaging in foreplay that lasts, I don't know, the whole week or the
Right.
whole day, for example? Or is it because that every time my partner, okay, if he's a man, if he's approaching me, if he's approaching me and every time I kind of feel that he's approaching me because he wants to have sex and he wants to have penetrative sex, and I'm not in that mind frame, and that's his intention, I'm going to be put off by it as a woman.
Sure.
Because I'll just be like, well, every time he touches me, it has to lead to somewhere. Why can't it just end there? And I think that's a superpower, and it's also magic between partners where touching, kissing, holding, even groping can be done in a way of, gosh, I really desire you, but this doesn't have to go any further. And we can just sit with that like sexual energy and just enjoy it.
I love that, because I think people are expecting it to go somewhere. And I think we don't maximize on the fact that we can just be together and we can just touch each other and we can just hold each other and it doesn't need to lead to something. And sometimes women or men might not want to get there, but doesn't mean you can't share sexual and intimate moments without saying, okay, now it has to end with sex. It's funny, we were at, just reminded me of, was it yesterday? I think I was I went to play paddle, and my partner and I were just, we do hold each other and we're very intimate with each other. And, I guess people around us can see that we share a quite a good connection. And someone at the paddle court stopped us and said, oh, it's so nice to see. I thought romance was dead. And apparently she was having a conversation with someone just the day before and said, I was saying that romance is dead. And then I come to paddle and I see you guys holding each other and kissing. And I love to see public affection. Public demonstration of affection. And it was a nice feeling. I was a little bit shy, to be honest, but then, it was a very nice feeling to get that someone else witnessed that and actually said, this is very motivating. Like, I'm happy to see that it still exists. So I think that's what it is, right? Is that you can hold and you can touch and we're always so, I've been like, I used to hate PDAs. I was always like, my partner sits there and I sit here, but why you don't need to do that. Like, you don't have to just keep your sexual energy for the bedroom. You can actually just be in that space. And again, like you said, it doesn't have to end with sex. Yeah. So I think a lot of people can really work on just that physical touch. And more than just a physical touch. Like, I think women really want to get to the point where they can, let's say, we can orgasm, but it doesn't have to be through penetration. It's
absolutely
rarely through penetration anyway. But yeah, I think the foreplay, and like you said, you can have foreplay for a week. It would be great to have foreplay for a week.
And it builds on the anticipation.
Yeah.
Because you don't, if we look at sex in terms of not what we do, but where we go, that window is so powerful. Because we're now not focused on, on specific sexual behaviors or performance or what we need to do to get off, We're like more focused about like, how can we connect? And I think that's an important part about this process.
Yeah.
And, those public displays of affection, of course, you're not going to be able to have sex in public. So as it's building the anticipation, these are one of the main key ingredients in terms of how we can have mutually sexual fulfilling experiences into the ages, is because we're able to build on the anticipation. And that's an important thing. We also redefine sex, sexuality, what it means, our likes, our dislikes. And then we're also able to make adjustments. And I think those three key areas are really important in us being able to experience sex and pleasure and desire as we carry on through, because there's no sell-by date, for a mutually sexual experience, as long as you're able to redefine it, because our bodies are going to change, right?
Right.
Different things are going to happen. Hormones are going to be fluctuating. Our physical health may not decline. But these are things that are ever changing. And if you think about it, the constant factor is change. So if we're able to adapt and then work through that, and this is the thing, it's not just the openness of partners, but it's also the willingness. Openness is okay. Like, I'm open to talk about it. Willingness, what am I planning to do about it?
But I'll go one step further than that, because I'll go take you back to when you said we don't vocalize. I think that's another thing.
Yeah.
I'll talk for my experience coming from an East Indian background with Muslim parents. I was never taught what it's okay to want or to enjoy or to like or to even feel shame. Like, that conversation never happened in our family. And everything I've done since then is just self-learn. So maybe you experiment a little bit in university, or you find a partner who's open. But I don't think up until very recently, well into my 40s, that I actually vocalized what I like and what I don't like. And I expected the partner to just know, or maybe he didn't even know, and he didn't really want to experiment because I never asked for it. But he knew what he liked. And so it would always gravitate to, let me pleasure you. Oh, you like this, or you like that, or you like this kind of a touch, or you like this kind of position. And it was never really vocalizing what I liked. And I think a lot of women, I am assuming now again, that women don't really talk about what they like. And that's an important thing, because then how is the partner supposed to know? And you said mind read. Well, you're mind reading, you should mind read that we've known each other for so long that you know what I like or what I eat. But he's not going to know what you like in bed because you never talked about it.
Yeah, that's true. And this is the other aspect of this, is that some people, when they're getting to know each other, they will move with those tried and tested forms of pleasure, because it worked with person X. I am going to now try and do it with this person.
Right, exactly.
And the reality of that is that we're not supposed to be doing that. We're supposed to be rediscovering ourselves.
I love that.
And also discovering this new person. Absolutely. And finding out what they like. Because that tried and tested forms of pleasure, it doesn't work. Over a period of time, it becomes very monotonous, and it almost becomes scripted. And you don't want sex to feel scripted. You want to be able to feel that adventure, that excitement, that, and this is the thing. We have to learn our bodies. For men, understanding your ejaculatory control reflex, so that you can experience, for example, multiple orgasms as a man, is very possible. But you also need to understand how that mechanism works. And this is something that I work with in my therapy space with men. For women, understanding, what parts of your body or where you derive pleasure from. Understanding how far, what's your tipping point before, for example, you feel as if is your no-go zone, where you're going to experience an orgasm. Are you able to practice edging? So these are the kind of things that we need to be able to understand for ourselves, but also be open to exploring, because you can, speaking about what you feel turns you on or what ignites your desire is one thing. having the confidence to share it with another person
Yeah,
is
for sure.
another. It's a level
sure.
of vulnerability, which then presents this paradox of intimacy, because if I'm meeting somebody and I'm getting to know them and I'm saying, oh, these are some of my, sexual desires, and I'm being very vulnerable, and then they turn around and look at me and say, yikes. I don't know
could
whether I
see-
want to be with you.
yeah,
There's a level of
absolutely,
rejection there, which is
sure.
then going to make sure that you shut down and then you
Yeah.
don't want to talk about it anymore. But to
Right.
experience genuine intimacy, you need to be honest and authentic in yourself and share that with another person and hope and pray.
Well,
that they-
otherwise, maybe that person is not entirely for you, right? Because I think that if you can't accept that these are some of my, let's say, kinky desires, and you can't accept that, then, well, I don't really want to go through life with someone who is not open to that.
Absolutely.
And maybe, like you said, it needs to have a conversation and we need to be open about it. But I think suppressing that will then end up coming out in a different way. Either you'll find a different partner to do that on the side with, or you'll resort to watching porn, which I'm not against at all. I think in moderation, but I do think that there's, unhealthy habits that can be formed if you don't have that open and honest conversation with someone and acceptance.
Yeah, and we need to normalize that. Because I think we're going in and, maybe this is something that we've learned as women when we get into a relationship, that we have to keep trying. We have to keep giving. We have to keep doing. And nobody really taught us how to stop doing that. So I think normalizing that particular, statement that you made of it's not, these kinks are not for me.
Yeah.
I don't think I can do them.
Right.
But also finding out that, not minimizing some of the things, because, when you're meeting somebody and you're getting to know them, it's almost like a negotiation. Oh, this is what I'm like, and this is what I'm like. Okay, would you be open to doing this? And no, I wouldn't be open. So there's a lot of like this, there's a lot of communication going around. And sometimes if you start to think, okay, I don't like that, but I think I could do it for that person. Where is that initial thought coming from? Am I abandoning myself?
Sure.
Or am I genuinely doing this because I want to try something new? One of the things that I do recommend my clients to do is to try something at least 3 times.
Absolutely.
Before you say
I
no.
mean, you know what I say
Oh,
that
yes.
about food. So I always tell people when they're like, oh, I don't like avocado. I'm like, well, you should actually try it at least 2 or 3 times before saying, not that this is the same, but absolutely. I do think that, look, I think that we also come tradition, family, the way you've been brought up, and even past trauma can stop you from wanting to do certain things.
Yeah.
And I think if you meet a partner and that's what they want, I 100% agree that you have to try it at least 1 or 2 times before you completely shut it down. And the other thing is that go deep down and say, okay, where is this resistance coming from? Is it just coming from the fact that I don't think I would enjoy it, but I've never tried it? Or is the resistance coming from that I've had it in the past and I didn't like it? But like you said, you can have or not have something with a different partner and it feels completely different when you're with your new partner. Or is it something deeper? Is it deep rooted in trauma or something in past life or from, I really believe in past life traumas coming through and especially in sexual ways in a partnership. You carry a lot of this DNA that comes down, and that's a whole different podcast. But there's a lot of healing that happens when you're with a partner.
Yeah.
And what I will say is, through different modules, through different therapy, which of course you're in that space, you can probably go in and then say, this is something you're carrying from childhood or whatever it might be, or even from parents. I mean, I've experienced things that I see in my parents do to each other in a negative way, whether it's fighting or anything else. And then you take that on. And for me, as soon as somebody raises their voice or swears, it takes me back to that childhood trauma. And I'm just like, I shut down completely. So that can come into play when you're in a relationship and you haven't talked things through.
Yeah.
So it's not just sexual, it's also saying that let's talk about real life things that can then help us when we do get into bed and we do try to understand each other on a sexual level.
And I'm a strong believer that we need to build on, like, I know there are 8 different types of intimacies, and sexual intimacy is one thing.
Right.
You'll find that when people talk about intimacy, they're just thinking penetrative sex,
Right.
but like intimacy goes, it's so broad. And we need to build on the other levels of intimacy before we get to the sexual side.
Right.
Because
So can you tell us some of the ones that you're talking about?
Emotional intimacy is one of them, sharing your vulnerabilities. I think that's an important part. Physical intimacy, which, by the way, is nothing to do with sex. It's the intention. It's how you're using nurturing touch or even sensual touch to remind each other that you're still there. There's a social intimacy, like what you do outside of the space that you're in. How do you enjoy each other, whether it's with friends or on your own. Also, experiential intimacy. How do you create new experiences for yourself that you can remember? Intellectual intimacy, really important. Can I have a conversation with you about world issues? And there's a lot happening in the world, and yes, sometimes you might want to switch off and not think about that. There's a lot happening in our country too that we maybe don't want to. I'm huge in terms of not wanting to know what's going on, because I honestly I feel as if, like, when I take it on, it really, really gets me down.
Yeah, you and me both. I think I come from the same space, but I think what I like to also think is that intellectual intimacy is also being able to have a conversation with someone. Maybe it's based in your career or in work or in whether it's a global issue, and knowing that you can actually have a conversation,
and
productive
how can we
conversation
grow
with someone.
together?
Yeah.
And if I'm going to share, like, things that I know that are my challenges, am I able to share that with you and also understand that you're going to help me come out of my comfort zone in that space?
Right.
And I think that's the one thing that I've recognized that is really beautiful about my own relationship with my partner, is that he allows me to get out of my comfort zone, which is really uncomfortable. And I've honestly had to sit with some of my emotions, which have been really big and overwhelming. But it's also allowed me to see that a relationship, even if there are moments of discomfort, that they can come and go, as opposed to, that they're going to be here forever.
I mean, when my partner watches or listens to this podcast, he's going to have a headache because he says that all the time. But his whole thing is that you have to be able to have difficult conversations.
Yeah.
And do hard things together.
Yeah.
And I never understood that. I think I understood it growing up, but again, working with this whole childhood trauma, I saw so many quote unquote difficult situations not being resolved and hard conversations not being had, or resulting in some kind of, whether it's a fight or it's a physical reaction, like physical abuse, is I kind of shut myself off from all of that. And it's very recent that I've started to understand and unpack how important it is to be able to have those difficult conversations. Everything doesn't have to be a breeze. If you can get through that dark spot, if you can get through that difficult space and still be okay with each other, you're doing something right. And I think for me, especially, I always shied away from those difficult situations and difficult conversations. So now, that being said, I think there's a lot of people out there that are having difficult conversations that are not resulting in the right, you're not coming out at the end unscathed.
Yeah.
So I guess that's why we need therapy. That's why you're here.
But it's interesting that you say that, because I think this is also, like, touching on the emotional bits of connection.
Yes. Finally, we get to that. So we were talking about this before, and it's got. Please remind me his name's Gottman.
Gottman,
Yes.
yeah.
And he's been doing experiments he's been doing research on couples for who knows, maybe decades, and how these bits of connection is. I'll let you explain it in a more technical term, but it's when you have those conversations like, how's the weather, or are you doing okay, or how is work? And you're trying to, get a little bit of attention from someone. I always use I got hurt or I'm not feeling well. Like I'm always, I'm one of those people who are just like, oh, I broke a nail, and I'm looking for my partner to come back to me and be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? And you do get that. There's a word for it. You were saying that you pull towards or
Yeah,
you
you
push
turn
against,
turn
turn
towards.
towards. Right.
You can turn towards, you can ignore,
Yeah.
like you don't exist. What
Yeah.
you just said does not exist.
Mhm.
And then you can reject altogether and say, why are you talking to me about your
Your
nail?
nail. Yeah.
And I think
Absolutely.
those little things, when you're rejecting and ignoring, those are like what I would describe kind of like the relationship death by 1,000 paper cuts. Because the more that happens, the more unsafe you start to feel.
Right.
And when you start to feel unsafe, you're not going to feel open
Yeah.
to talk about things. But the funny thing is, talking about things is often the gateway to accessing pleasure and desire. So then that gate closes. And then, for example, you're in a situation where, I don't know, somebody is, a woman is cleaning up or sweeping something in the home, and the guy comes home from work and he grabs her from the back and does a little hump, which can feel flirty and fun. But she doesn't see that way. She gets annoyed.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you haven't been listening to me for the last few months or years when I've expressed myself and I've talked about things. And then now all of a sudden, you want to start playing with me. I don't look at that as fun. Yeah. So it's like looking at some of those things and how we can do more to be open and maybe start to look at things differently with more curiosity. Because I think if we look, if my partner is coming to me and saying, this is something that you did that hurt me, I owe it to myself and the person who's saying that to open up and be more curious about why, what. Those are, when. Those are some of the things that I need to be doing, as opposed to shutting down and becoming defensive.
I was just going to say, but that's the knee-jerk reaction, is that you shut down and say, it wasn't my intention to hurt you, or I didn't do it like that, or I didn't say it like that. But what you've said and what I've heard are two different things.
Yeah.
And I think exploring and being more open to, my intention was not to hurt you. However, let me give you a little bit of space. Let me hold space for you to be able to express, what is it that I said that hurt you? Or can you see it in a different way?
Yeah.
And that's not always easy. And again, since we're being open and vulnerable, I'll talk about my own relationship. It's taken us a really long time to get to the space where there's mutual understanding. And there's that openness to say, I didn't like what you said. And for him or myself to say, okay, firstly, I'm sorry, that was not my intention, but let's unpack this a little bit, instead of just getting defensive and just being like, oh, you're just overreacting, which is generally the reaction that we have. It's like, you're, from both sides, you're overreacting, or I never said it, or you should know me better. I would never say it like that.
Yeah. And you see what that does is you will find when you hear something like that, you will find yourself repeating yourself over and over again, because at that very moment, you don't feel heard. And that's pretty powerful. So when you kind of like look at the patterns in terms of the the relational dynamics that's happening within a couple, if there's like a tendency to keep on repeating things, that is a cue for you to stop as a partner and say, okay, this has been on repeat for X number of time. Maybe I need to take a step back and ask why and investigate. Because when you're cut off, oh, we're not going to talk about this, or I thought we already resolved this. What that is doing is it's increasing the the feeling of not being safe in that space. And you see, what happens sometimes is that instead of people fighting, they go quiet.
Yeah.
And then your regular kind of like communication or the way that you connect goes away. So, you might be in a relationship, but you're no longer making eye contact. You come home from work and it's, oh, how's your day? Oh, great, great. Okay, then we go and do our separate things. You're having dinner, people are on phones, or you're watching TV, you're not really connecting with each other.
What you're doing is just avoidance. I mean, that's one of our coping mechanisms is avoidance. But it's funny when you say that, I can track back to a few of my, I have had a few relationships, which I have said in this podcast before, so this is not news. But I can track back and say, wow, I remember that. I do get quiet. Like I will just shut down and say, I don't want to talk about this. Because two things is that I think for me, it was, one, I'm not getting anywhere. We've had this conversation before and you're not going to listen anyway. And secondly, it was just like, it's self-preservation. Like, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to be vulnerable. I used to hate that word. I used to really hate that word, by the way. I used to hate the word vulnerable because it always made me feel like I was being weak. And it's taken a lot of healing for me to say that that's not, it's not weakness, it's actually strength in vulnerability. But for me, it was always like, I'm a strong woman and I can deal with anything and anyone and I don't need anyone's support. And vulnerability is not my thing. Like I remember a good friend once gave me a book. I think it's the one by Darren Brown. Her name is Daring Greatly. I believe that one talks about vulnerability. One of her books does. And I remember picking it up and I read that word and I was like, oh no, this is not for me. So it's taken a lot of shifting. And I think that's what happens is that women just shut down and say, if I'm going to be vulnerable and the other person, my partner, is not going to listen. Again, I say this women, but it goes both ways. It's men as well. So there's a lot of men, and I've been in a relationship with a man who was trying to be very vulnerable with me. And I was just like, nah, this is weakness. Like, you can't cry in front of me. This is not okay. So I own my own stuff that I did look at it as a weakness and not open to talking about it. And that relationship died very, very soon after this whole behavior. Because I was the one not listening.
And I think that happens because when I think about my own personal experience in this space, I would say there are two things that I think drive my understanding of relationships and how I show up. And it's my professional practice, which is great, but sometimes it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, of course. Because you're like, wait, I should know better than this. And
or I know what's going to happen. So, we need to do this so that we don't get here because I've seen it.
Wow, that's a lot of control.
Yeah, so I need to
I thought I had control issues, but that's a lot.
But yeah, so I've come a long way in terms of learning to emotionally regulate in those times, but also past experience. Because when I think about it, I question whether I've actually had healthy relationships in the past. And I would say that I don't think I have, in all honesty. And I think being able to say that out loud has now allowed me to look at the relationship that I'm in right now as a place where I can be my true, authentic self without fear. And there's so much learning that I'm doing in that space. So while I think that, I'm working with clients and it's great in that space, what I have found is that I still have so much more learning to do.
I mean, we all do.
And I get activated in specific spaces where, because I spent a while being on my own, just going through the healing. So now that I'm in the space, I went into this relationship thinking I'm healed. Oh no. I think there were parts of me that I did work on and they were really good for me. And I learned a lot from that. But being with another person can also activate you. So I strongly believe that a good relationship can be healing.
Yeah.
If you're able to feel safe and be more of your authentic self.
Do the work, I think, while you're in the relationship. I mean, I always say that you can tell, and again, I take big sabbaticals between relationships. That's my thing.
It's important.
But what I realize is that when you're alone and you've done all of this healing, but like you said, as soon as you put one person in it or you have a partner, it can take you straight back to ground zero. And you turn around and say, wait a second, I did all of this healing but I was alone. I didn't have that trigger, or I didn't have that person who would push me outside my comfort zone. And now that I do, can I actually handle it? And you said something about a healthy relationship. I'd like to know, how do you define a healthy relationship?
Oh gosh.
There's one thing I hope you're going to take away from today's incredible conversation with Dr. Cathy, is that intimacy isn't a destination. It's an ongoing journey of curiosity, communication, and connection. We're here to exploring our own body, deepening your relationship with yourself, and simply challenging old beliefs. Remember that pleasure isn't something to be earned, it's something to be understood. A huge, huge, huge thank you to Dr. Cathy for sharing her knowledge and helping us get in touch with ourselves, understanding the relevance of conversation with our partners, and thinking about few things that maybe we've never thought about before. If this episode resonates with you, share it with someone you love, even with your partner. Maybe sit and watch it together and understand how important it is to understand and to communicate. This is a 2-part series, so make sure you watch both part 1 and part 2. Until next time, this is Life Unfiltered by Fawz.